Greetings, family. This is Kyle Dixon here for another edition in regard to the celebration, the acknowledgement of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy for today on January 16, 2023. 2023, new year, new ideas, new beginnings for some people, or a revision of old ideas, old beliefs, old traditions of people. So, um, this video this talk I want to have really for today, and I don't want to talk long. And you see, I have on my shirt. I have a dream shirt, my Dr. King. You know what I'm saying? You know the hood shirts that they sell at the events. It's crazy that they're now doing these style wise as far as the motif of the old school way. But anyway, I digress. Um, when we talk about Dr. King, I know a lot of times in the media, say Dr. King, they just talk about the I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. But they rarely talk about like the man that he really was, and like he was human, like he was just like any one of us. He was special. That's without a doubt. He was special in regard to his skill level and his acuteness, and also his family background. I mean, he went to college at was it 16, 17? You know what I'm saying? So like, he was highly astute as far as his acuity and intellect on seeing things, his academic, and got his doctorate, before the age 25. So I mean, the man was definitely very special. But I want to talk about like his legacy as far as like where do we fit in? Where's the next Dr. King at? People ask, well, where's the next Dr. King, or where's the next Malcolm X, or the next uh Stokely Carmichael, or um, well, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker. These are all people, James Farmer, all these people that are involved in the civil rights, and Medgar Evers, all these different people involved in the civil rights era that we place in time with Dr. King and his legacy and his work. I want to say that Dr. King today for me means service, right? And if you don't love, how can you service? Because service and love are intertwined. People talk about, I love this, I love that. Excuse me. They have a strong liking, but in the true essence of love, which Dr. King exemplified amongst many other of our leaders that we call leaders, service, love. And that goes all the way back to ancient Africa, right? In regards to that concept. So he definitely showed his love by servicing the people, servicing us as Black folks, and within a nation of other people who decided to join his cause and join the cause of others. But we don't talk about what Dr. King is. He didn't do this alone. And I want to bring that up in this video. That's one of the main things. He didn't do this alone. He didn't do this by himself. He had people, men and women, in various organizations, in various organized manners, to follow through on his plan that him and his team came into being, came into knowing and implementing in these places in the Deep South, in the Midwest, on the East Coast, even on the West Coast to certain degrees. So, Dr. King is not just this figurehead of I have a dream. Like he's way more, he's much more than that. And I want us to recognize that, Dr. King is in all of us. These leaders are kind of almost like modern day deities. Now again, I'm not being sacrilegious in this. I'm saying this from a standpoint of observing people, how they observe many of our leaders who have been killed or died, etc. They hold them up as like almost like a deification, if not that, in regards to who they were. They seem perfect, and but it's really about them holding these certain character traits that people can admire about them. Dr. King had character flaws in other areas, but in this area, or this particular type of leadership, where he had the resolve and the patience of a strategy like nonviolence to be able to enact that and get people to believe in it and to carry it out, to seek justice. The main point of it was to seek justice and freedoms in this country. You got to, tip your hat to that. Yeah, I salute that. And I think we have to remind ourselves that these are characters that these people, men and women, were exemplifying for us to show that it can work. It has substance. It is a method to us gaining our liberation in these discriminatory, racist, systems, right? So again, organizations, the SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, he was the president of until he was assassinated. The Congress of Racial Equity that helped him in the early parts of the Civil Rights Movement. And then with the SNCC movement, Student Nonviolent Coalition Committee, with Stokely Carmichael and others, becoming, him aligning himself with these young folk, again, going towards freedoms, fighting, resisting for their rights, but in different ways, slightly different ideologies and methods. So when we think about King, we have to think about his family. We have to think about Coretta. Coretta was just as astute, just as sharp, just as fierce, but she played a position in her family and also in the civil rights movement in regards to her connection to her husband. But she was just as dynamic, but that was not her role to play in the civil rights movement because of her and her husband and I'm sure the agreement that they had. But we cannot forget Dr. Coretta Scott King. We got to do that because when we talk about the masculine and feminine principle, America bases a lot of things on the masculine, which is fine, which is okay to a degree. But you also have to recognize the feminine, right? The feminine principle, which is somebody like a Dr. Coretta Scott King, or the other women that played a part in the civil rights movement, the Rosa Parks, the Fannie Lou Hamers, the Ella Bakers, and there's many, many, many more that we still don't really know yet. The Dorothy Heights, all these different people, Angela Davis, you know, Kathleen Cleaver, it's just all these people, right, that played in the civil rights, Black Power movement, the struggle still continues, a little continuum, right? But I just want us to recognize this, and I want to bring this into the forefront because I had a conversation with a friend of mine today, and we were talking about, what would the Dr. Kings, the Dr. Coretta Scott Kings, even the Malcolm X's, the Dr. Betty Shabazz, what would they be talking about during these times? And abortion, racism, discriminatory policies in education, in the workplace, police brutality against people of color, namely Black folks. This is not absolved. Like, these things still exist, and we still need to fight and resist against these things. But we also have the things of technology. What's going on now is the Chat GPT talk about, like, where's this going and what is it going to be used for, and this is the cusp of, like, the new artificial intelligence, the AI technology, which is I think Elon Musk and Google partnered to create that. These are things that the new Malcolm X's, the new Dr. Kings, the Dr. Coretta Scott Kings, the Betty Shabazz's, this is what they're going to be talking about. Net neutrality, Chat GPT, blockchain. These are all the things that a lot of other people are talking about right now. And these are the things that are not absolved from race. They're not absolved from discrimination. They're not absolved from white supremacist ideology and systemic issues. They're not absolved because they're all a part of that. Why? Because some of these same mechanisms of technology are created by these type of people and organizations. So when we talk about and bring up the issues that we have today, like, what would Dr. King think about Chat GPT? What would Dr. King talk about this craziness of this whole gender war nonsense? That's really not even an issue per se. It's an issue because it affects us, but I think people are making more of it than it really is. And here's why I say this. Because you have somebody like a Dr. King who exemplifies sacrifice. You have people who are trying to get in relationships that have maybe a misguided view or don't even have a thorough understanding of what is love and sacrifice. What is that truly? Myself included. I'm learning this, right? Just like learning on the job, learning while you're living, learning while I'm living as well. What does that mean in regards to our relationship to what? To each other. What does that mean in reference of Dr. King's legacy? What does that mean in reference of your legacy? What does that mean in reference of your family and your lineage, which is your legacy? What are we putting out here that we can go back to in regard and say, what is our legacy? Now, let's be real. We all have parts of our development, our maturation that we're not proud of. Dr. King, was known to have extramarital affairs. Dr. King was known to smoke, right? Smoke cigarettes, and probably some other things. He often well, not often, but he contemplated suicide more than once, right? These are things that I'm learning about him. But Dr. King was also a man of the people. He was more about justice than profit, right? He was more people over profit. You need money, you need those resources to move and make things move and work in conjunction and to develop for certain things to change. But that is not the end all to be all. Money is not the end all to be all. It cannot be. It must not be because we existed before money. People existed before money. The fiat was I'm talking about, the cash, the currency. But there also is a currency. There's a spiritual currency. There's emotional currency. There's a physical currency. There's a mental currency. And Dr. King was definitely tapped into that. He was willing to give his life for the justice of his people. He was fighting injustice, but he was leaning more into the justice and what that looked like for us. What does that look like for you? What does that look like that for us as a community, a global community of African people, Black people? What does that look like? What organizations are we a part of? What organizations are we creating towards our freedom? Instead of worrying about some damn gender war. There is no gender war. There is war against the genders. I'll say that. But there is no gender war. The more we feed into that, the more we give it power, the more we give it currency, the more we give it vibrancy. The less we think about negative, the more we think about the positive of justice and how that can transpire, what that looks like in various fields, education, politics, right? Economics, agricultural, finance, business, food and health. These are all various factors that we can plug into and not have to wait on the next Dr. Martin Luther King, or the next Dr. Coretta Scott King. They're already here. We're looking at them. Look in the mirror. Okay, look in the mirror. If you're waiting on that one person, keep waiting. But if you wait on that one person, which is you, keep living, keep growing, keep serving with love the needs of yourself and the needs of our people. So I just want to share that with you all, family. I would love your comments, whether you agree or disagree. I'm okay with that. That's where we have the discussion of community. Just because I'm here in front of the camera doesn't mean that my voice is more valid than yours. We all need various voices, but in the various voices, we all need to unify and be on one accord as far as how we want to change the world. And those are various aspects, different dynamics, and and industries that we can do that in. And there's an industry that we haven't even probably created yet that needs to be created in order to also add to our justice and freedom in this country and then over the world, right? So I just want to share that with you all because that was on my mind. And again, how can we as a people, as a nation, serve in light of sacrifice and love and do that in one accord? How can we do that? Talk to me. Talk back to me, yo. Talk black to me. All right. So enough respect. Peace and blessings, you all. Have a great, beautiful day on this Dr. King. Remember to love equals service, and service is a part of why we're here on this planet. All right. Uhuru, Pamoja Tutashindi. I'll holler at you later.